All right. So welcome everybody. Got a small group right now. We'll see who else shows up. Um, we're going to do the part two of um, the Flexbox container uh, review. It's a new item, new feature of Elementor. It it's now made its way into Elementor 3.6 beta, um, which if you search on that, you can download it from the GitHub repository. But again, as we always say, don't use it on a live website. So Brian and I and Sharon, I believe, were on a call yesterday. It was yesterday? Yeah, yesterday with Elementor about this, and they shared some slides with us. And so there were some of them that I thought might be helpful. So I'm going to share that screen and just for a few things. So let me do that. And all righty, can y'all see that? Okay. So it's called the Flexbox container. And Flexbox, and it's like, what the heck is, and CSS Flexbox, and what does CSS even stand for? CSS stands for cascading style sheets. That's the information that is stored in your website that tells a web page like what's font to use, what size it should be, what color it should be, how much margin or padding it has. That's CSS. And Flexbox is a way of doing CSS that actually has been around a while. I'm trying to remember how long ago I first heard about it. It's somewhere between 5 and 8 years ago I first heard about it. I think it was at a WordCamp. And I thought it was the coolest thing since sliced bread, but you had to do it by hand, all of it, hand coded. And I had been working with WordPress for a few years, and I said I don't have to do this because of WordPress. WordPress. You can still have to do HTML sometimes, but the difference between building something in WordPress and hand coding a website is night and day. And I did that for a long, long time. But anyway, Flexbox is now in a much more significant way going to become a part of Elementor. So, and it gives us a way to arrange things on a page or in a container. Now, one of the things that it's important to reiterate, we talked about last time, is when with containers, and I'll show you what they are and how they work. They are going to replace sections. They're going to replace columns. They're going to replace intersections and the columns and intersections. So where in the past you'd have a section and a column, you'd have 3 containers, and intersections you wouldn't. And in the long run, it saves. They call it the DOM. If you ever were to look at the code of a web page, all the code that makes up the web page pretty much is called the DOM, except for scripts and things like that, and stuff that's in the header. Well, that could be CSS too, but anyway. And the idea, one of the benefits of using containers over sections and columns and intersections and columns and intersections is it reduces the amount of code that we have. So anyway, this is one of the slides that Elementor provided us with as part of their. We have I don't know, 10 or so that I want to show. This kind of gives you an idea of, like, let's say this is a row, and this was defined as a row in Flexbox container. This would be the main axis, and this is the cross axis. And that there's a distinction, because some of the settings you'll do will affect the way it behaves on the main axis and the way it behaves on the cross axis. Like you'll be able to make it, right now they're just centered in this container, both left and right and up and down, but you could be able to take this and align it to the top, this one align it to the bottom. Or you could have them stair stepped to some degree. So there's that. And then there's thinking about directions, it's either a row or it's a column. So it's either going left to right, horizontal, or it's going top to bottom. That's a column. And so that's a setting in Flexbox, is whether or not you want your content to be a row or a column. And that's kind of pretty much the same thing. Then in Flexbox, you can set something to be a row. Let's say this is your first item in your row. You have 4 items, and you can do reverse row, where it would be at this end and go this way. That can be handy sometimes if, let's say on your desktop, you have an image and you have text underneath it. Maybe it's in a smaller section or column, but then you get down to desktop and the image is at the top or it's at the bottom. And if you could go use reverse row to flip it to a different place if you want it on the mobile, because you can do different settings on desktop, tablet, and mobile. And of course, with the recently, they have custom breakpoints you can do. So same deal with a column. Column can go this way or it can go this way. So, and then then there's alignment. Now here we're getting into language that's specific to Flexbox, but Elementor doesn't expect you to know what these are. It has little graphical things that tell you what they are, or, gives you a hint to what they are. So the direction row this is what flex start looks like. This is what center is, and this is flex end. It takes all the items and moves it to the end. This takes all the items and moves it to the start, and this centers it. Then there's, this is what reverse row and flex start looks like. Remember that start goes over here, but if we go back to this, remember flex start, it was here. So reverse row, it's going to reverse it like that. And then center, again, this is reverse row, center, reverse row, flex end. So it's just kind of the reverse of that. And then there's alignment. And this is, again, some Flexbox lingo. Space between, which basically means that it takes the items. Now this might be a logo, and this might be a menu, and this might be some social media icons in a container, but it will space them evenly out inside the parent container. Then there's space around, and what this does is it takes a look at the space around an element. So looks at the space around this, and you'll see that the space here is twice that, because it's taking this space and putting it here, and taking that same amount of space and putting it here. So it's doubling up here, and it goes all the way through. And then there's space evenly, which makes the space from the left side and right side of the container the same as between the elements. But they have little icons that I'll show you in a sec. Okay, so now this is where it says this is a setting, justify content alignment on the main axis. And it's important to, this was a little not 100% clear to me in the beginning. The main axis is in a container is what you set the direction. Is it going to be a row or is it going to be a column? That's the main axis. So when the main axis is a row, the flex direction looks like this. And you can see the kind of visual hint. You can see that that's aligned to the left, that's centered, that's aligned to the right. I don't remember right off the bat a space around or space evenly, but anyway. And then the same thing for a column. These are obvious, these first three, and these are probably the ones you'll use the most, or the space between. Yeah. So this is for columns, this is for rows. And you see this is sort of icon for using a row, and this is the icon for using a column. So we'll go here, and then this is on the cross axis. Like you can put it at the top, because right, if you're in a row, the cross axis is a column. So here's what the columns look like. If the main axis is a column, this is the cross axis would be for a row. You don't have to remember all this, but I'm just so that these icons make sense and you understand. Of course, we're recording this and you can come back and look at it again. So before or now, we'd have a section, and inside that section would be at least one column, and inside that column would be at least one widget, usually, unless you were doing something interesting like making a background image of the column and just having that. People do that. Now, or with Flexbox, basically it goes to that. You have a container and a widget. No column, only one section. If you wanted, and we can have a bunch of widgets and we can just arrange them. And you can put a container in a container. We'll get to that in a sec. And go back, the difference in terms of the DOM, if you will, document object model, looks like this. This is the before, essentially, what that one thing looked like. And then using the container, it goes down to that. It goes from that to that. And if you have, you'd be surprised how many sections and columns and divs and stuff you have on a web page when you go and look at the code. And that was one of the knocks on Elementor for a while, up until how long ago has it been? Brian and Sharon, a year and a half ago, or maybe two, the Elementor started paying work, changing their code base where that they were reducing the DOM. They've been working on it and making
about a year and a half. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I need this next one. Here we go. So I said you could put containers inside of containers, whereas when you used a nested sections, you could only put one nested section inside of a section. And now you can put many containers as you want inside a container, but you don't want to go too crazy with that because that sort of defeats the purpose of reducing the DOM. And I think that's all we're going to show from this. Oh, no. People may not have realized it, but Flexbox has kind of already been in Elementor for a while. If you were editing a column, you may have seen this, the horizontal line. This is Flexbox stuff. Start, center, end, space between. That's already there. And this is what it looks like now for the container. So in this particular instance, the direction is a column, and they haven't don't have a line items selected. The default is to the left, and then justify content is on the vertical axis, because the horizontal axis. And then you can, we'll talk about this in more detail, but you can actually, I know people were saying, well, what do I do with my old site? Well, you can convert your sections to containers if you want. At least as of now, you can have a website that has both sections and columns as well as containers. But when you have the new version of Elementor, it will still honor the sections and columns, but anything new you create is going to be a container. And let's see, do I need anything else? And you can also convert whole pages, but that you might want to only do it in sections at a time because it might overwhelm you. So anyway, I think that's all we're going to show from that. So let me get over to my browser and we're going to start walking through some stuff here. And I'll share my screen again. This is, here we go. Okay, so let me move y'all over here. I'll take this, maybe make it just a tad bit wider. Okay, I've got, I don't know, 5 or 6 different examples of what we can do. Some of this we've done, we went over a little bit last time, but there's some things that we didn't talk about. So we'll, in this particular instance, we're going to take what we have here is a container. See, it says container, and we have 3 widgets. We have the logo, menu, and social media. So let's see here. I've given some kind of directions as to what we do with this to make it in a row. So let's see, header to row, we go container, items, and align items. So let's go container, we got that, items. So this is for the container, and this is a change. I was telling Brian, things have changed a lot since the last time I did this. I had a developer's edition version 47.2 or something about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they're making lots of changes. And so in fact, the tutorials that a lot of the tutorials you'll find that are only a month or 6 weeks old are out of date because they've changed all this. So, but anyway, the items, which are these things, were not separated out. They were part of the container section. So these are the items. And then, so we go align items. We'll go, we're first of all going to say direction row. We're going to say align items center. And we're already making lots of good progress. And then the justify content, we're going to go to space between. So let's see if we can find that. Yeah. So this is space between, this is space around, and this is space evenly. So we want space between. And boom, there we go. We have a header set up, and it's one container with 3 elements. Not one container, not one section with 3 columns and an element in each one of the columns. This is three elements. And so there's that. Then we've got a row here, and I've set, it's interesting to look at this. When a section, excuse me, it's going to take me a while to get used to the lingo. When a container is just sitting by itself, or it's the parent, still has the thing that looks like a section. But if it's a container inside a container, it appears that it's not the same. It's interesting. So this is a container inside a container. And I've set the minimum height to 500 so that we can play around with the vertical orientation here. So right now it's aligned. Let's take a look at the items. Right now it's align items vertically, align them vertically centered, which is what we have here. And so what we're going to do, is we're going to go to advanced. And this is where we can actually edit not just the container, but the actual items. And so we'll go align self. What the heck? There we go. Okay, align self. Right now it's on center for this one. I'm going to move it to the top. And then on this one, I'll leave this. I think this is already on center. We'll take this one and go to advanced and make it on the bottom. And easy as pie. Now, if you were to try to do that with, or you could take this and put it on the bottom too. If you were to try to do that with just columns and sections, you'd have to put padding in here and or margins and for each one of your images, and could get hairy as you went through trying to keep track of styling it for other devices. You can do the same thing with column. And this is a column with 3 images in it. And we can set whereas we're changing instead of the vertical orientation, we can change the horizontal orientation. So we'll go to this container and I'm going to go to the items, and I'm going to, they're horizontally centered. That kind of gives us a base, and we're in a column now because column is the downward pointing arrow. And then we can go to each individual item and we can align self. We can go left, align self center, which is kind of what that already was. And then we can go with this one and we can go to align self and we can go right. And we have a kind of a stair step thing going on. And if you were to go to tablet, you can change all this because you can do all these settings on desktop, tablet, and mobile separate for each one. So there's this, and then now this was one that seems simple, but can kind of sometimes be hard to get your mind around, particularly coming from what we used to work with. It's the idea of the wrap and no wrap. What we've got here is we've got obviously 6, these are icon boxes. I didn't know if they're icon or info boxes. 6 icon boxes, and there's not any sizing set up on them. Well, I'll take that back. There might be, but we'll get to that in a second. But let's go to the container. The container, where this? This is a full width container. The nav is helpful. Navigator is helpful to get those. Okay, so I've selected this because I'm trying not to make this too big, because as this gets bigger, the letters get smaller on the screen. So we have the container selected, and we'll go to items. And right now it's in a row. It's in a row, but if it's in a row, where did all this come from? Because this is all considered one row, sort of. But what's happening is it's run out of room, so it's wrapping down here. But and the wrapping is here. So we go to container, items, wrap, or no wrap. Right now it's on wrap. But if I were to go to no wrap, it just starts running off the page. Well, but that's because if we go to container, let's see, overflow, it's on auto. So when it goes to auto, you get this scroll bar where you can use this. And that would be kind of interesting on a phone because you could just do like this and swipe through them. But if we turn it to hidden, it see if I can collapse this. Can I make that? Let's see here. Okay. Let's take a look, see what that looks like on the front end. So I'm going to update view page. Ah, again, it's challenging to get your mind around. And I'm looking at this and it's not doing what I expected. Well, that's because we have, for the overflow to be hidden, we have to have it no wrap, I believe. So let's get our container chosen. Let me get this. Okay, this is the container. And let's see, container, items, layout. So we have wrap. There'd be no wrap. And overflow, hidden, or auto. So let's go to the container. There we go. And I believe, let's pull this out a little bit. So, okay, the idea is that it's supposed to it's just it doesn't have the scroll bar, it just disappears off the page. So let's go back to edit with Elementor. And we'll take this and we will go back and we will go to the container select. Well, I think sometimes okay, try this again. So I'm going to choose this container. Yeah, let me do this. Choose the container, and I'm going to go to items, and I'm going to say wrap, and then it's back to that. So there's that. And then we've got 3 more info boxes, and we can choose the container, we go to items. Right now it's in a direction row. And you can see this is heading 1, heading 2, and they've got different icons. If we were to go to reverse row, you can see that just reverses them completely right backwards, 1, 2, 3. Of course, if we did on columns, it'd go that way. And if we went reverse column, it'd go that way. It's super easy, just click a button. So go reverse row this way. And but then we can do something else. We can take, let's say that we always want heading 3 to be first, even if we add a bunch of other things. And of course, first is relative. It depends on the direction. But let's say we take this and we go to advanced and there's order. Now you can go to start, end, or you can go to custom. So if I say I want heading 3 to be the first one, and let's say do this one to be okay. And then let's make this two. So 3 is 1, 2 is 2, and 1 is 3, the third. So, and then of course, we can always make ourselves crazy by going to back to the container items and do reverse row. And now it says 1, 2, 3. So you can kind of make yourself crazy. One other thing that may come in handy, let's say something like this. Let's say you had a whole bunch of items. Let me do this here. Let's say you had a bunch of, let's say you're a web designer, and many of us are or will be, and you had a portfolio and you had maybe 12 images that you kind of maybe laid out something like this, but these were screen grabs from the homepage of websites you built. Well, you can actually make this whole container a link, and all you do is just click the container and it's in the HTML tag, because you can have, let's say when you're doing your header, you would give it an HTML tag of a header. The default is a div. You could make it a section, you could make it a footer. For the main body, you could call it main. These are kind of HTML5 guidelines, I guess. But you can also make it a link. And we could go to, let me see here, move this around. Is that right? Yep, I think so. So we have that container, and if we were to preview it, now it's a link. Click on it, take us to Elementor. So that's pretty cool. So and then a question that a lot of people may have is, what are we going to do about our existing sites? We've got all these sections and we want to take advantage of the containers and their benefits, but I'm built, my sites with sections and columns. Well, you can, if we select this, because this is a section, see, it's a section. I can click convert, and let me go here, collapse this, bring it all back up. And you can see sections and columns. Now this isn't a great example of it saving you space in the DOM, because this is fairly simple, but I didn't want to get into anything too hairy just for time's sake. But so we click on this, say convert, boom, it's done. And it did a pretty good job. It still looks right. And what's good too, I didn't know it would do this, it creates a duplicate. So this is actually still the section, I think. Am I right? Yeah. See, it's still the section. but our new container is down here. And it looks pretty much the same. So did a pretty good job. And then you could delete the section if you wanted, or tweak your new container, whichever you like. I'm going to delete this because I'm going to stay with container. So
Carrie, can you do something real quick for me?
sure.
Can you pull that section back up? I was just want to compare I know you did it on the example you had it, but I would love to compare the DOM of the section and that new container you just created. Is there a way for us to see the code?
Yeah, but it's not that different on this particular one. See, well, let's see. I think we go here. It's basically just replace the sections and the columns with a container.
Mm-hmm.
Except you obviously have more control that you could do with containers. Now, if you had a nested section inside a section and you had multiples of those inside a section, then this would make a huge difference. But I just wanted to show you how you do that. And just press the convert button right there. So let me look at my notes here and see if there's anything I've missed. As I mentioned, this containers will replace current section, columns, and intersection functionality, but you still will be able to have those from your, if you did it before 3.6, I'm not sure this is going to release in 3.6 to the public, but it is coming. I'm going to make sure a couple of pointers here. I guess it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Do not use this on a live website. It's not meant for prime time. One thing I think I mentioned it last time, but it bears mentioning again. This won't work, or at least parts of this won't work. It's my understanding. And Sharon, you may know, or Brian, you may know, this won't work with WordPress 5.9 and a block-based theme. Some of this, I don't remember the exact limitations, but Gutenberg Word 5.9 has really stepped heavily into Gutenberg because now it has, as I understand it, full site editing, and they're building themes now that are all built with Gutenberg. And if you have, and there's not that many, but if you have one, this won't work so well. I'm not sure if it'll work at all, but.
Well, the option, I'm sorry, Carrie, let me just say the option is you either go with Gutenberg or you go with Elementor.
Right. And I have kind of gotten into a place to where either it depends on the site. If I'm doing a really simple site, I'll use the Hello theme. If I'm doing something that is a little bit more advanced, I'll use the Astra theme with its add-on Astra Pro. So I don't. Yeah, Sharon's right. If you're going to use that, Gutenberg, you'll probably want a block-based theme if you're going to be heavily into that. So, if you want to learn more about Flexbox, I'll drop a link into chat. Where the heck is it? Here we go. There we go. This is This is a link that I bookmarked probably 6 or 7 years ago, but they've kept it up to date, and it's the complete guide to Flexbox. And it's about HTML, but it could help you. Might find that interesting. One thing I didn't say is, let's see here.
Hey, on that website that you just gave to,
Yeah.
you can also get, well, just one second, give me.
Oh, you got the poster?
You
Yeah.
can also get the CSS grid poster.
Cool. Cool. I saw that. I don't know if it was, I think it was for Flexbox, but I guess they have one for CSS Grid.
Well, Flexbox is based off the CSS grid.
Right. So, yeah, I saw them selling them. I didn't see what the price was, but yeah, that was pretty cool.
I keep needing to get mine framed, but you can see it's still sitting up on top of my.
Yeah, I've got all kinds of stuff like that. One thing I did, let me update this. I'm gonna go back to dashboard. You want to make sure in your experiments, if you did get the three, well, let's go to plugins. I'll show you what we're running here. This isn't a dev edition, this is a beta. So we're running, where the heck is it? 3.60 beta 2. And so, let's see, go to Elementor and settings. Experiments, you want to make sure that
I think it's in the top section.
there you go. Flex container, they're calling it Flex as opposed to Flexbox, but you make sure that's active. Get active and then save changes.
You notice it's before the item that says stable feature, so it means it's not stable.
Right. Well, it's still an alpha.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next stage is beta, and then they'll be in beta for a while, and then they'll go live. So not sure when it's going to be part of the main package, but it will be soon, hopefully. Let me make sure I haven't missed anything. I think that's all I wanted to cover today. So anybody have any questions or suggestions or experiences, or has anybody played with this?
I know we have a small group today, but no one's, other than the leaders, have tried to play around with it. No.
Hi, Corey. I have a question. Do you think, or would be better if you know, that this will replace the sections, columns, and so on in the future? That means that it will disappear from Elementor?
Well, you can't. It will disappear in the sense that when you start making new web pages, you won't be able to add a sections or columns. Everything's going to be a container. But it's my understanding, and I don't know, you can't ever say when it comes to software that something will never happen. But I would imagine that for the foreseeable future, which that could be 5 years, 10 years, I don't know, that you still will be able to have, update to a new version of Elementor every time it updates, and your sections and columns will still work. But if you create a new page or create anything new, instead of a section, it would be a container. And you can have containers and sections on the same page. Because if you remember earlier, when I was showing you this because it was originally a section and I converted it to a container. It didn't make it a container and throw away the section. It had both of them on there. So you can have sections and you can have containers on the same page. So
Yep, they're going to continue to support both the intersections and the container.
yeah,
They'll obviously let us know when they stop supporting both.
yeah, and hopefully they'll give us, like a year's notice.
Yeah.
Because there are people that are in companies that have built dozens or hundreds of websites, and if you had to go back and go in and change all that for that, that would be a big ticket deal.
Yeah.
But probably, I don't know, 10 years or something it might, or 5 years. That's a long time in internet time. 5 years, they may begin to sunset it, but again, they wouldn't do it overnight. But if you had in 5 years, most of the time, unless you have a small website, you don't use it much, and not many people go to it. It's just sitting there. 5 years is old now for a website, because the technology is advancing so fast, and people's expectations of what their website should be able to do is advancing. A lot of companies are making up complete redos every 3 years or so. So I would imagine at some point it will go away, the sections and columns and all that, but not anytime soon, if you consider 5 years soon. So, hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes. My question was because that reason that you said that maybe let's say all sites will continue with that, and if they disappear from Elementor, if they will build with Elementor and you make an update, then well, the website will crash. It could be, but that's what I was asking.
Yep. No, it's well, I've tested it. You can have both on the website, and it's not a problem. So,
And Juan, this is such a large change for Elementor. I'm pretty sure they'll maintain it for a good long while, because it is such a game changer, from night to day.
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. It doesn't have to be about Flexbox or the containers. If any of y'all have had a challenge or an issue that you're trying to figure out that you might need some help with, because that's part of what we're here for, is to kind of be an Elementor help desk, if you will. Yes. What can we do for you, Melanie?
I haven't been using well, I kind of adopted websites that use Elementor. I'm a Beaver builder girl, so so I'm learning both. And well, I'm learning Elementor because I'm now supporting a lot of websites that use Elementor. The one thing I haven't done a lot with is accessible websites with Elementor. And there really isn't a lot written on the Elementor documentation about how hard they are trying for accessibility. I mean, other than the one page that, it's turned on, the experiment's turned on by default, and that's about it.
Right.
So I haven't gone in and tested. I tested a bunch of the modules, or I should call it widgets, modules, widgets, and to see how they compare to Beaver Builder or even the block editor. I didn't know if anybody here had done anything with accessibility in Elementor.
Well, Sharon, you might be the one to answer that because I think you've done some work in accessibility.
So, so yes, there's not a lot of documentation. Elementor people they will hold up to that. But the developers are aware of it, and they do build in whatever they can to help with accessibility. But you also, as a designer or developer or whatever you are, have to be conscious yourself of creating accessibility content.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, the areas to pay attention to, like your tags, your
Well, I'm not talking about the basic stuff. I'm talking about like things with screen reader, places where you can put in screen reader text. Doing the right ARIA labels on icons in modules, and kind of the minutia stuff that most people don't pay attention to. So like even an accessible, I mean, they use the example of tabs, but usually the big bugger is accordions. So,
but you can do that now. Did you not know that? You can. There's an item in your whenever you're creating a widget, there's always something called attributes, and those attributes area where you can put your ARIA labels and your data labels. So we'll do that now.
Okay. There's it's just I haven't done a lot of testing with all that yet, and when people ask, well, which one is the best one to use, and that's like, well, again, and that's using Elementor's built-in modules, because as soon as you add a third-party plugin, all bets are off. And I mean, it's the same with Beaver Builder. You may have something that's really great, but not every module and or widget in either builder are going to be accessible. So.
I do know that Elementor is heavily working on their documentation. So I talked to I think it was during the summit that they had recently, and I was a host in one of the rooms, and I was one-on-one with one of the developers there. So they freely admit their documentation isn't the greatest right now, but they are currently releasing new documentation almost daily.
And accessibility is such a rabbit hole you can go down. I mean, it's, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, one of my clients is a marketing firm. They they had a couple of clients that older people were their target audience. So they were concerned about accessibility and readability and all that. And there's software out there that you can, as a plug-in, I guess it is.
No, that is not how you do accessibility. Those are lies. Those things
cost
are
a fortune, and it seemed like it added things. In some senses, it made everything worse.
Exactly. So stay away from the overlays. Stay away. Walk away. Do not waste your money or your time. You're going to end up getting sued eventually using them. So because I've been doing accessible websites for years, and so I know what I can and can't do with Beaver Builder, but I didn't want to have to go to the block editor, because I mean, to me, that's a big step backwards after you're using a page builder. So I know it's getting better, but I'm not ready to go there yet. So I know, like with Beaver Builder and some of the things, I could build custom. I could take a existing module and customize, put it in my child theme folder and customize it and stuff. So if I needed to use that kind of thing, but mostly if you just follow the best practices and build like you should be building. I mean, the biggest problems I come across, even when I do audit on websites, no alt tags, alt text on images, the headings are not hierarchical, and color contrast. And then every once in a while you'll run across, like I just did an audit on a Beaver Builder website, and they had a carousel, the Beaver Builder carousel slider was not accessible.
Hmm.
The images in it were, but the navigation was not. But the UABB Ultimate Add-on carousel module was accessible. So I just swapped it out. But when I was doing the repair, but you know, it's just one of those things that you have to test each one, and it's one of those things where by the time I did a spreadsheet and had everything listed and what was and what wasn't, you know, there'd be an update and then you'd have to start over.
Yeah. Now, how do you test? Do you just run screen readers on this websites, or?
Actually, screen readers are kind of close to the end one.
Okay.
Most of it is just using like AxDev Pro tools. Accessibility Checker Pro is another good thing to get like the first level of mistakes that you can find. Then AxDev Pro and either Adobe Color Analyzer. There's a great little color analyzer called Color Contrast Analyzer that allows you to do the color contrast by clicking right there and there. And then sim daltonism for color blindness. And then once you get all that, the major stuff done, and the keyboard navigation, making sure everything is, you get there, and even in case of accordions, you can get out of there. And then I go to like VoiceOver, because I have a Mac, I only use VoiceOver. And then get I have a client that, I mean, they have somebody on staff that's blind. So I'm like, can you do this? Can you check this? Because she's at NVIDIA, and versus me having to try to find, I used to do parallels and run NVIDIA, but I reformatted my Mac and I haven't added it back. But just getting somebody else to look through it.
Sure.
And yeah,
Well,
it's just time consuming.
yeah, it's when they were going through that, interested in that, I thought, man, there's no bottom to this rabbit hole.
So Melanie, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So do you give presentations on accessibility? Because and I would like to have you come on board and do a presentation.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you put your email or contact information so I can get in touch with you?
Sure.
Yeah, that'll be a great one.
Yeah, I have a question before
Sure.
everybody hangs up. I made this little one-page website
Uh-huh.
in Elementor, and I did it on GoDaddy hosting. And when I look at it in Elementor, it saves, it's beautiful, it looks great. And then if I go to the regular outside of Elementor and just try to pull up the website, it comes up like Elementor was never there. Any ideas?
Well, I mean, I always think about the most simplest answer first. It's like, was the page saved or even or published?
Oh yeah, it was definitely saved and published about 100 times because I wanted to make sure. And then and it works inside Elementor, but when I go outside, it doesn't work anymore. It comes up with like a raw WordPerfect sheet on the.
You mean like with just code and stuff?
Uh-huh.
Well, that would tell me that perhaps your style sheets aren't loading.
Yeah. Did you insert any CSS code in the CSS code area?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you give us a URL to look at?
Yeah, it's all over trucking ins.com.
All over trucking ins.com.
Uh-huh.
I know what's wrong.
Oh, good. What's wrong? So I can fix it.
You have the home page set to the blog post to an archive page, and you don't have it set to the home page. So you need to go under general reading and choose the home page as the home page.
Okay. I would have never got that on my own. Thank you so
I'll
much.
show you what she's talking about. Let me share this.
Yeah.
One little thing, Michelle, but one big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pointed in the right direction.
Yep, we've all been there.
yeah.
We've-
I'll show you what she's talking about real quick. Go to Elementor.
No, you go to your settings. Yeah.
Yep.
Reading.
Go to homepage. And this is a demo site that has
Yeah,
all
by
kinds of-
default, it says your latest post, and you have to tell it to use a page.
Oh, you could go here. You could have any page
Oh,
to be your home
okay.
page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Normally you name your
Got
home
it.
if that's what you named it. So, but if you named
Yeah.
it something different, then you would pick that name. That's your home.
Yeah. But by default, because WordPress was a blogging platform originally, it says your latest post. You
Yeah.
have to tell it what page is the home page.
I would have spent the next 6 months trying to figure this out. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Very good.
Thank
Well,
you.
that was worth the whole night right there.
Oh, you're telling me.
At least for us, because it's fun, doing these,
Mhm.
showing people how stuff works. But even if it's a small thing, when we help somebody figure out how to solve a problem they haven't been able to figure out, that is good. That's
Oh,
Well, I mean, I spent
totally
an
agree.
hour today. I spent an hour today trying to solve a problem
Mhm.
in an Elementor site, and I mean, it was a lesson learned. Usually, when you have a CSS issue, you go up the CSS tree to see where the issue is. It was the next one down that was causing the problem, and it was Elementor was overriding. Because I was using a mega menu in one of the drop downs in Cadence, and they make the trigger a button. Elementor's button thing was overriding the Cadence menu button toggle for the mega menu, and so my menu was disappearing if the window was active. But if I did another window off to the side, everything showed up, and it was like, this is freaking me out. And it finally, I mean, an hour, and finally I went down one, and I'm like, okay, there's the white that's covering up all my buttons. And it was an Elementor thing that was totally overriding it. It just took me like 2 seconds to write the CSS to fix it, but I'm like, an hour of my life sucked into this.
Well, what happens sometimes, I know it happens to me, is when you're trying to solve something like that, you get in a loop where you keep going back and looking at the same things over and over again. So what I usually, if I can, because if it's not something that's just like dire emergency, I'll just put it aside, look at, say, okay, I'll look at this in the morning with fresh eyes, and then you can look at it. I don't know if your brain in the back's figuring things out. The next morning you look at it, go, oh, it's this.
Yeah, right.
That's true.
Need some sleep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, I made dinner.
So,
And it's like,
but yeah, you can, and I had, I'll ask a question to anybody. Have any of y'all had any issues with Elementor forms sending mail? I mean, aside from SMTP type issues, I mean, just generally, because I don't use Elementor forms that much.
I don't. I never do.
I had built a site a year and a half, 2 years ago, which was probably the most complex site I've ever built. And it was a semi-membership thing. It was for an organization that trains or mentors and assist young Black women, girls, high school, prepare for college, how to learn to make good life choices and all that kind of stuff. And it's a nonprofit, and it was one of these deals to where they had, all the people the girls that were part of the program had logins, but if they didn't actually go into the back end, they would get a special version of the website. If they were, juniors or high school or under, they'd see one version of the website with different menus. If they were seniors, they'd see another. If it was somebody from the company, they'd see one thing. If you were an admin, you'd see something different. So there was like 6 different versions of the menu depending on the user roles. Anyway, there was a thing that they also, the senior girls had the opportunity to, because people could also volunteer to help. And there was a database of volunteers who wanted to be a mentor, and then had to go through some screening process to be a mentor. But so they were these list of mentors that the girls could look at, and so they could click on somebody and they'd see their profile, not all of it, but one of the things that was hidden from the girls was their email address. But it was there, or at least it was in the database, because these profiles were generated through Gravity Forms and ACF, and so there was an ID for their email, so there was a profile at the bottom of the page. There was a form that just says contact this mentor, and it was like your name and your email address, and just 3 or 4 fields, and I don't remember them all, but mostly making contact with a mentor, saying, would you be my mentor, kind of thing. About 2 months ago, that form stopped working. In terms, it wouldn't send emails to the mentor, wasn't sending the copy emails to the admins. It just stopped working. And I screwed around with it, and for quite a while, and I just never could figure it. I had to hire a developer to come up with a solution. I even changed it over to Gravity Forms, but Gravity Forms, and we know somebody. It's part of our WordPress, or was part of our WordPress meetup here in town. Naomi Bush. I don't know.
Naomi.
Yeah. And she's like an expert in Gravity Forms. She writes and sells plugins for Gravity Forms, add-ons. And I tried to get her, but she was busy. And so anyway, I found a developer. He found a way to work around it. I dumped the Elementor form and replaced it with a Gravity form. And he pulls some JavaScript tricks to make it work. So, but I was just wondering.
Yeah, for mission critical things like that, I usually use a transactional email service for the website. Like you can use Postmark or Mailgun, so you have a log of everything that's going out of the website. I use Gravity Forms, just period. I don't use anything that doesn't save the data somewhere. But for anything mission critical, I'll use a transactional email service, because I don't want a website to depend on the PHP mailer firing.
Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah.
There's, I've used SendGrid before. Probably that's what I've used mostly.
SendGrid has actually had a lot of their servers labeled as blacklisted.
Really?
So yeah. So if you use SendGrid, make sure you go to I can't remember the website, but you can MX something, where you can put your MX your IP addresses of your SendGrid server to make sure it's not been blacklisted.
Well, so which you listed? I think you said Mailgun and
Mailgun, Postmark is another good one.
Postmark, yeah, okay, yeah, I remember one of our guys in our, I think Micah was talked about that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Postmark. Okay, cool.
But Carrie, I actually have that similar problem with a client, and I do use Mailgun on that particular one. But for this client, it's their server that blocks the emails. They tend to think anything coming from their website is spam, even though they expect to receive emails. I get this constantly, maybe once a month. Our email on the website's not working. We're not getting anything from the website. And I go and look at the logs, and there's tons of messages that have been sent. So I just download the messages and say, okay, in fact, last month, I downloaded the whole month of messages that they received and showed them that you're getting your messages, you're just blocking them. So it's not.
I've actually had clients say that they didn't get anything, and I'm like, well, you opened it at 9:30 in the this morning.
Yeah. So
and they're like, how could you tell that?
If you have something like we were talking about that logs the messages, that protects you. You know everything's working on your end, and keep a log of everything that. And Elementor actually does that now on the submissions. Yeah. But I use an additional thing as well because I'm sorry now it just escaped my mind, but I keep an additional log of the emails that go. I think it's WP Mail that I have on mine that logs my stuff. So,
well, what I've done in the past because a lot of the sites that I've built, what's in the emails is pretty, it's not like super sensitive. It's I wouldn't do it so much with that site I was just talking about because that's got personal information about young people. But what I've done sometimes is when I set up a form, I'll have it to them, but I'll have it be CC to me.
Yep, that's what I do too.
And like I had an art and frame store that I built a website for. They called me up a couple years ago and said, we have customers telling us they send emails to us and we never got them. And I looked and I said, well, I did. Because what it had turned out that somehow it was something in their IT had blocked them or something. So I went and pulled up something about, I don't remember. I don't know. I was able to pull up all those emails and send them. It was like 45 emails or something.
Yeah.
And but that was a simple thing, and it almost never happens. But that time it paid off.
Yeah. I'm working with another client. They're trying to do some autonomy marketing stuff that obviously needs to trigger emails.
Right.
And, I'm working with another lady who's supposed to be the expert with Lifter LMS. And so she's been trying to get this autonomy thing to work. And so I came in to help her with it. And turns out that the autonomy was working fine. Everything was working fine. I told her there's nothing wrong with how you have your autonomy set up. So what I did was I took her tests kind of and pulled them onto my site and just did a simple test, and the emails came through. And I said, this would tell me that the people that are hosting this is blocking your email from going out. So even though it's going out, but it was being blocked. And sure enough, once I told them that, and she sent a message to them, we finally got like this Mindcast thing that they had blocking everything.
Well, you never know, because I have a site that normally if it's my customers, I pretty much insist that we host it on WP Ninja. Just, everybody has their preferences, but
some companies, like she's working with this one company that just insists on having it on their server.
And the marketing firm I do work for, I've convinced them that any websites I built for them
Yeah.
need to be done on WP Engine, but they have it was a relatively new customer that their site was hosted on Cloudways. And I've heard that's not bad.
No.
I actually moved from WP Engine to Cloudways.
Yeah, well, I've thought about it.
Huge
I've thought
increase
about
in
building a
speed.
few on Cloudways and seeing how it goes. 'Cause
Yeah.
WP Engine can be expensive, but
Yeah, I'm saving $200 a month, and I have 2 servers on Cloudways, and my speed, I actually, almost all my sites scored an A on GT metrics just by moving them to Cloudways.
Wow. That's,
But you don't get that Cadillac support. You have to do a little bit more on your end.
right.
But you know, that's $200 a month. I had a grandfathered plan on WP Engine,
Me too.
unlimited sites.
Oh, not that.
But I was limited by storage. I had 95 gigs. So I was up at I was getting where I only had like 15 gigs left.
yeah.
And that was getting a little tight. But the thing is, even if I went up to their $600 a month plan, I still couldn't grow because I maxed out on my number of sites, because the 600 was limited to 100 sites. And I already had that. So,
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I've got to find a more affordable solution. And I looked for a year.
Well, if you had that many, that would make sense. Absolutely.
And so I have them split about 50-50 between the 2 servers. And but I have to say, speed, good support. I wouldn't say, you know, every once in a while, I mean, I got somebody who must have been his first day at WP Engine, because he was telling me stuff that wasn't true. But I had to like educate him on DNS. But you know, Cloudways, it's the same. It's like, you know, you don't have that built-in firewall that you kind of got spoiled with at WP Engine.
Right.
So you have to do more like I'm using Cloudflare.
Right.
But I have to say, I'm very, very happy. I have a DigitalOcean premium server. So I would definitely, if you're a agency, do with the premium, but and then you get the Object Cache Pro and all that stuff.
Right.
But
Well,
that's a pretty good job.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because this was the first opportunity I had been thinking about it, because some people I follow on YouTube that had talked about Cloudways and that they thought highly of it, and it just so happened this came up about a month ago that they had a site they wanted to be rebuilt, and they were on Cloudways, and it was built on some, you know, it was a mess. And,
Just to say that.
And so they said, can you redo it? And it wasn't very big. It's 8 pages. So yeah, we can do that. And I said, I guess their technical guy said, well, what I started saying that I needed to install these plugins, you know, like there was Elementor Pro. At that point, I didn't know I was going to rebuild the whole site. I thought I was just going to redo the home page. But then, and so I had rattled off like 5 plugins that I wanted to add to this as well. Seems like you're going to be doing a pretty big overhaul, so I'll set you up with a staging server. So they did, and everything worked fine. And I asked, can I have access to do on-demand backups? And he gave me that. One of the things I didn't like, and I may have missed something, is on WP Engine you can describe why you're doing that backup. You can say before updating the plugins, or before updating the theme, or before doing whatever. It just has a date and time, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
I'll tell you one of the big things, because they both use Blog Vault, for
Yeah.
migration.
right.
But on WP Engine, you'd always have to run better search replace to make sure everything got when you like went from staging back. And on Cloudways, as soon as you put the domain in, it scrubs everything. Because
Wow.
when I moved the sites, I moved 100 sites in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I mean that saved like 15 minutes for every site, because I
Sure.
did not have to scrub the database, and I didn't have to you have to scrub HTTP, HTTPS, making sure everything. And that Blog Vault with Cloudways migration plugin is awesome. I had one fail out of 100, and all I had to do is restart it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll tell you, I moved, another good service that I found is here in Houston. Excuse me.
Excellent.
I haven't woken up from my nap yet. I had moved some sites to Nexus. They're really good, and they actually did the migrations for me, which was one thing off of my plate. So
Right.
they did, and these were WooCommerce sites. So they did all the migration for me, and everything was perfect. And I've had to use their support a couple of times, and they are on it. And so I totally love them. I would not, I moved them from Pantheon, and I was not happy with Pantheon. So just to give you who we've used before.
Well, I went to WP Engine about, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe, or longer. Because when I first started doing WordPress, building WordPress, well, not when I first started, but after I'd been doing it a while, there was, I thought, well, some of these places, and I didn't know any better at the time. I was still, relatively speaking, a newbie at WordPress and all that, with HostGator, you could get a reseller's account, and for $25 a month, you can have as many websites as you want.
Yeah,
And I
but you
thought,
know
wow,
that.
that's pretty cool. Then I could charge them $20 a month, and I could have 100 websites, and that's really a profit center. So I started doing that, and I had about 20 sites that were on HostGator. And one day I was because I had looked at WP Engine, and I had worked on some sites at WP Engine, and I knew it was good, but it was expensive. And so I was one day I was at my desk, and all of a sudden my mailbox blew up.
Oh no.
Because I was running a ping, an uptime monitor on all the sites, and so that pings the site every minute or two or whatever it does. My mailbox just blew up, and it was all these sites. It says such and such sites down, such and such sites down, such and such. And that day had to be the worst job in the world, technical support for HostGator, because it wasn't just me, it was every reseller server in their network crashed. So after that, and they got the sites back up, and most of them in a couple hours. One took about 4 hours to get back up, and when it came back, there was some broken parts to it, and it turns out that was maybe the most important site, because it was for the city of Loganville. It's one of the local cities. It was for the city. I'm not sure they never said anything. I don't think they ever noticed. But so I said, okay, that's it. So I bit the bullet and went to WP Engine. So I've been happy with them so far, but I'll keep. Brian, the project you and I were talking about on work together on. I was thinking we might do that on Cloudways.
We can do that.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm a WP Engine guy myself, but we can do that.
Just to see. So, well, everybody, I appreciate y'all showing up, hanging in there, and y'all certainly have contributed a great deal to this. So, thank you again for coming. And
Thank you.
I think we're getting close to time, and I want to respect it.
Right.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you
was
again,
awesome.
Sharon.
Thank you so much.
Michelle, Melanie.
Thank you, Melanie and Sharon, for your contributions. And Melanie, Michelle, looks like we solved the problem for you.
Oh,
today.
yeah, you just made my day.
Good, good. All righty. Well,
All right,
y'all
everyone.
take care wherever in the
Take
world you
care,
are,
everybody.
and have a good evening. Bye bye.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.